All right.
Wow.
So now are we going to talk about the state of Israel? We're going to talk about Zionism and...
Yeah, I'm so Northy, my lokes go viral for me.
Jerry Zionism field.
Well, here's my thing, right?
Right.
Look.
Tell me what you think about Israel.
Well, because it's like... I don't even know where to start the conversation.
We just want to have fun. We don't
The
want
thing I feel-
The car has flipped over during the right
Right.
turn over to this topic.
Right.
The car has flipped over.
I'm trying to sustain the bit to ease us into it.
The
I
thing...
keep a blue flag hanging out my backside. Obviously on the left side. That's the grip side. That's the grip
I
side.
keep the Palestinian flag on the left side.
I feel the instinct to just say, like, obviously when you critique the state of Israel,
No, true.
a lot of people just go right to you're anti-Semitic. Right. And my whole thing is...
And these are sensitive times.
Right. And it's like, well, what if you're against all states and settler colonial projects and powers? That's the terms on which we're critiquing it.
And I think the Kanye shit is a good avenue into this because he's using... I watched like a half of the fucking Drink Champ shit this morning.
You're a hero.
And I can't do the whole thing. But he's like he's equating Zionists with the Jewish
people in general, right?
Which there are non-Jewish Zionists and there are Jewish people who are not Zionists. So that can dead that whole
right.
that whole thing.
A lot
right
of
there,
fundamentalist Christians, funnily enough, are and have been Zionists, which is one of the biggest contradictions of the whole spiel.
Is it though?
Because they're supposed to be in Zion during the
No, I'm saying
for
what Kanye is saying.
Well, for what he's saying, yes, but then for the long term, like fascist international shit, where all of these fascist contingencies are either pro-Zionist or pro-African separatism, like they were pro like the Garveyist movement and all this shit. Like they all have a vested interest in just getting rid of each other, you know? So you have like Black Hammer fucking pairing up with Proud Boys and fucking fundamentalist Christians pairing up with Zionists. The Nation of Islam was fucking with the Klan and all this shit. Like they all have interest in just getting out of each other's faces. So it is contradictory in the sense that all of this shit is contradictory, but in terms of like their stated principles, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, just like Kanye, you know, being on a fundamentalist Christian bent, which he is.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of grabbing onto like Farrakhan-esque anti-Semitism at the same time. So like this thing of like, he's probably imagining Ashkenazi Jews or like white Jews. And then he's just using that whole angle to push something that's just anti-Semitic in general.
Right. Right.
But it's like, it's just a mess. It's just a mess in terms of rhetoric and like espoused ideology, and it's like harmful, obviously, and dangerous. And like that's the thing I wanted to say is like a lot of people who are anti-Zionist like can maybe act like I don't even know how to phrase it, like act as if anti-Semitism doesn't exist at the same time, right? Like, and I think that's tied to like geopolitics, different nation state interests in different regions, and then how people weaponize religion, like, you know, faith-based systems and all these different things against each other. But
there's multiple ways into anti-Semitism.
Right.
Throughout history, people have found so many different ways to there's so many different plays.
Right. Yeah, jazz music.
But it's also like the real informative and insightful shit to me on this conversation is also in thinking about and recognizing, and I'm not Jewish, so I'm not an expert by any means on any of this, but recognizing the social hierarchies and even racial hierarchies and class hierarchies within the global Jewish community. you know, and like recognizing that there's like a legacy of, you know, Jewish groups and organizations and individuals who were anti-state and anti-state of Israel as a whole, and felt like Jewish people could have a homeland, if you will, without displacing other people or without, you know, reinforcing oppressive colonial structures, you know?
Israel as that plot of land wasn't even like the original like goal for the state of Israel. It was I don't remember what the other options were, but they had a couple of possibilities that they were floating around. It wasn't even like initially on the basis of like, this is our ancestral homeland. It was just like, we need a plot of land.
Yeah,
that's what it
we
was.
We need to protect ourselves.
And over time, it developed into, I forget who actually solidified that as the message, but like that became like, okay, this is the easiest sell.
Is that it?
Theodore Herzl was who started the movement. I don't remember.
That's the founder of the.
I don't remember if he actually made that decision though.
Movement or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know who in particular you're.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fucking discrepancies with like Netanyahu's father has tried to insert himself into the beginnings of the movement, and a lot of people would argue that he just was entirely inconsequential. But like now that's a good narrative, I guess, because but so I don't remember who actually made that call. It was probably Theodore Herzl, I think. But but yeah, they had a bunch of options, and it became like, this is the easiest sell for the international community, because they had to have endorsement from the international community, which I think initially was, I don't remember if it was France and then Britain or the other way around. I think it was France first. Yeah, with the League of Nations. So
USSR also was supporting the state of Israel and its development at a certain point in time. The thing that irritates me, another thing that irritates me, I guess, in the conversations around, you know, quote unquote Israel, Palestine, is obviously the discourse still being stuck in the false dichotomy of one state versus two state. And also people who are rightfully critiquing the state of Israel, but yet they still see states and governments as legitimate in other contexts, you know? So I think it's in that area where you start to see like anti-Semitic shit like slipping in, because there's almost like for them there's a double standard. It's like you're not actually like you don't have a structural critique that is consistent across the board. You're kind of applying it selectively to this particular situation. And a lot of the people who do that with big profiles, they're getting paid by Qatar, they're getting paid by Russian state, they're getting, you know, they have financial interests in like doing this and like taking this angle.
I think it's also like so interesting because about states is because Israel kind of represents the coercive nature of states in its purest form. Like it's a hyper state. It's using the coercive force all the time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a idea, it's a glimpse into what we have coming, is just a constant state of force.
Yeah.
Constantly being applied.
I would argue that is,
I mean, it's already
that's the entire history of the United States of America and Europe and whatever. I think they're just relatively young. It's a relatively young project compared to the other ones.
It's a smaller scale.
Right, smaller scale. So everything it's like we're watching what happened here and in other places hundreds of years ago. We're watching it happen in real time at a smaller scale.
It's also like it's like close quarters combat, I would describe it. Like it's really intimate war taking place at all times. Whereas here it's more like it's in communities and it's in the police force and
it's also like an offshoot of our own shit because they are, you know, funded by U.S. Just like and
we're trained by them.
Yeah, our police force.
Yeah. Who's we? Who is I? God, I'm gonna keep doing it too.
This country is trained by them. And their military. And
this nation's police force.
I've known sales guys that know like Krav Maga because they're like, if you're like a big business guy, eventually that shit bleeds into,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
because there's like there's like a whole cottage industry of like, oh, we're in the IDF, and here's how you'll hit your quota.
I mean, dog, this goes back to what I was talking about last episode about martial arts movie, fucking just nationalistically selling everybody's fucking.
Huge.
I rewatched the one. I watched a bunch of Tony Jaa movies. I got their styles. Man,
I need to.
I do want to bounce back to the one state, two state thing, because some people might hear me say, "Oh, one state, two state is a false." You're saying it's a false dichotomy. What would the other option be? And yeah, no states. But what that looks like structurally or in an organizational sense is like, you know, like a confederation, you know, of different regions or whatever it might be, and everyone can pass through and go wherever they need to go.
How humans usually settle naturally.
Yeah.
Which is just in communities, in peaceful harmony with each other.
Right.
It's a crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna speak on like the likelihood of XYZ happening, because I feel like that's, you know, whatever.
Sure.
But just purely having an imagination conversation.
Yeah.
It's like, these aren't the only options that we have, just objectively speaking.
Yeah. And just the amount of time it took for people to even become like comfortable with the idea that of Israel as a state. It was like, what, for the fucking 70s that became a thing that people are like, and then I guess the 90s with the Clintons and the PLO and all that stuff just was the first time it was actually like officially acknowledged by, at least by Palestine, as a state. Like that's the first time they conceded that it ever. I think it was, I don't remember what. I obviously read a lot about this very recently, and so I'm like trying to make sure I've internalized anything, and if I've gotten any details wrong or like off, but I think it was like 93 they were like negotiating with the PLO, and that's when like the two-state thing became a thing, and it was like tacitly implying that Israel was a state at all, and it was just like some contractual like bullshit basically, that forced Palestine into that position. I don't remember where I jumped off from, so I don't know how to end this statement. But
about the states.
I'll also say, like, you know, I have Palestinian friends who, you know, deeply aligned with in terms of values and perspectives, views on the world and society and whatnot. And the thing there, and some of them who even have had family, you know, in the PLO and whatever, and the thing they always tell me about is just like how in the hierarchical structure of these counter efforts, and I feel like I can relate to it as a black person in the US with the positions and views I have. It's like looking at the Black Panther Party or a lot of just efforts against empire and states and all of these different things, but reproducing you're pushing like a counter effort, reproducing the social logic that serves as the foundation for what it is you're actually fighting against. But you're just doing it in a different name and for a different whatever the agenda or program might be. And you know, Palestinian friends have told me about the corruption, the you know, whatever. It all just comes down to like, it all just shifts my focus personally back to hierarchy and like this through line of authoritarianism. It's like, if your shit is top down any which way, it's kind of doomed to fail. You know,
I think that's why like reactionaries don't take a lot of counter things seriously, because they can just see you're doing the same shit we do.
We do, but just for a different thing. Exactly.
So until there's like a tangible difference at its core, they're not going to be scared or take it seriously.
Exactly. And I've been saying that for years.
You know? Like even the PLO is like, there was this dichotomy with them and I think the PLF, is that right? That where one of them gets labeled as a terrorist organization and the other one basically gets absorbed into the neoliberal order, and you got Arafat like collaborating with Clinton and all this stuff. Well, I don't want to say collaborating, but like attempting to negotiate. And one of them is Seaman. One side of the movement.
One is what? Semen? I'm sorry.
One is.
I thought I heard that.
Your mind is in the gutter, Con.
One is Seaman as legitimate, and the other one is Seaman as a terrorist organization. But
you see the same dynamic in Kurdish diaspora,
yes.
Kurdish struggle, black struggle. You see it all across the board.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to legitimize the shit that doesn't threaten you, and then just completely render the whole movement moot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say something profound. That's why. That's semen.
Yeah, that's why.
That's.
I think of "Come Before Men at Sea" when I hear semen.